1. I just got to work. My car hydroplaned on a congested highway while I was going 80 miles per hour, and I'm fine. My car's fine, and no one's hurt. I want to stress that about 5 seconds before the hydroplaning, there was a line of cars next to me. This post may seem to go everywhere or not make sense, but that's because I'm really shaken up. There's just so much coincidence and oddity that has happened to me in the past hour. Before I was heading out to work, I stumbled upon the Glitch in the Matrix subreddit, through the random normal Reddit clicking. I've been subscribed for a while because I like weird stuff, but I just don't visit very often. I saw someone talking about quantum immortality, which fascinated me because I'm super interested in quantum mechanics, and the many worlds theory in particular. I got onto a post about people talking about how they could have sworn they were in a car wreck when all of a sudden they just weren't. I thought it was a fun read, so I closed my laptop and headed off to work. I was thinking about quantum immortality all the way to work. Again, I'm not sure I believe in it, but I was thinking about it more in the context of the many different interpretations of quantum mechanics, and how each interpretation would wildly change the world around us depending on which one is right. However, I was thinking a lot about many worlds and the logical extension that if it's correct, that I would essentially live forever. I was also listening to a podcast about the Romance of the Three Kingdoms novel, specifically the part where they are talking about how Zhang Zhao was trying to decide to turn his friend Guan Yu into a Cao Cao, because he knew that Guan Yu found Liu Bei. Again, Guan Yu would defect. As with most things, I'm kind of listening in and out to the story while my thoughts sometimes are in a different place, namely quantum immortality. There was an SUV in front of me, a car behind me, and I looked to my right because I was starting to approach my exit and there was a line of cars beside me, and I started trying to figure out the best way to start getting over. Then I hydroplaned. Bad. My car was at about a 40-degree angle. I went through 5 lanes of traffic and then recovered when I was already off the road. I let my car roll for a bit because I assumed that I had gotten hit. There was just no way I couldn't have gotten hit. However, no cars stopped. I turned around. No cars were crashed behind me. I got out of my car. I had no damage. I don't know how this happened. No cars reacted to me hydroplaning. No one swerved. When I looked ahead, there weren't a bunch of cars starting to speed back up, or anything like that. It was like I never hydroplaned at all. I simply do not know how I am alive. I was going 80 to 85 in a 5-lane highway, and hydroplaned in heavy traffic, and there's not a scratch on my car. Was it a coincidence? Probably. Am I lucky? Absolutely. Did I just experience a glitch in the Matrix, or quantum immortality? I really don't know. But I just have this pervasive feeling that I'm dead. I just don't feel alive right now. That, or I'm afraid I'm going to wake up and be in the hospital. Or that I'm brain dead. Edit. I wanted to add that I've always had an uneasy feeling when driving to work or back home from work. I don't know why. Probably because I'm in IT and I work late hours, so there's just no one around when I get off work. I just told my girlfriend yesterday about this fear I have and how irrational it is, because I love driving anywhere else. And I've never told anyone else about my odd uneasiness about driving to and from this particular job before. I don't know if this factors in again. It's probably just pure coincidence. 2. This happened about 2 years ago now. I was in my senior year of high school, and we just had a snow day and school was cancelled. So after sleeping in, I woke up and chilled in bed for a little bit before embarking downstairs for some coffee. This is important because I had time to fully wake up before this happened. I came downstairs and walked past my mom and dad on the couch. She was reading something on her phone and my dad was reading a newspaper. She greeted me good morning. I answered. And I thought it was strange because my dad didn't even look up at me or say anything when I came downstairs. I grabbed some coffee and wandered back into the front room, sorta living room, and made some small talk that I can't remember with my mom. Still, my dad hadn't even looked at me, he was just reading the paper. I didn't try to talk to him because he clearly seemed like he didn't want to talk. But it was the weirdest thing ever. My cats were suddenly at the front door. Since there was snow everywhere, my mom rushed up to let them inside. And I followed her, still thinking about something unimportant. But out of the corner of my eye, I could see my dad get up with his newspaper and silently wander out of the room, through the kitchen, and into the dining room that leads out to the back porch. I was finally annoyed at him, straight ignoring me for no reason, so I went into the dining room to talk to him. And he wasn't there. I hadn't heard the back door open or close, it's loud. But I figured that maybe I was distracted and missed the sound. Even so, I couldn't see him anywhere near the porch or in the backyard. So I went up to my mom and asked her, "So, what's wrong with Dad?" She kinda looked at me funny and just replied, "Huh?" It weirded me out that she didn't seem to think anything was wrong with him, so I said, "Dad, what's up with him this morning?" He just completely ignored me and left out the back door, I guess. "What's up with that? Is he mad at me or something?" Then my mom says something confusing as ever. "What are you talking about? Dad's sleeping upstairs." I was getting frustrated at this point and said, "Mom, he was right next to you reading the paper. He completely ignored me and just walked away." "So what are you talking about?" Mom goes, "He worked the graveyard shift last night. He's upstairs in bed sleeping. He hasn't even gotten up yet. Are you feeling okay?" I absolutely didn't even believe her. I ran upstairs and looked in their room, and sure enough, he was right there, sound asleep. Something weird happened, whether it was a glitch, doppelganger, or he somehow astral projected and I saw him, but it's the creepiest thing ever. Saw my dad sitting right there, plain as day. Could hear the paper rustling as he turned the newspaper pages. Could hear his footsteps, and yet he was asleep the whole time and my mom never saw him. What do you think happened? By the way, I have carbon monoxide detectors in my house. They work perfectly. 3. I'm going to start out by saying that I don't want to believe something sketchy happened. I would love it if anyone had a reasonable and logical explanation for this, because I just don't. Which leaves room for speculation and wild theories. So please, by all means, tear me apart, and ask all possible questions if it means possibly finding an answer. So, to begin, I'm a 28-year-old female, married with 1 child. I am by no means the sharpest pencil in the box, but I pride myself on being aware of my surroundings. I served 6 years in the military, so I have some wit about me and my surroundings. I do not smoke and have never been under the influence of alcohol or drugs in any capacity during the period in which this took place. Yesterday was like any normal day, except I woke up feeling a bit nauseous. Whether or not this is related is unclear. I went to work and had a normal 8-hour workday. I have a clerical job in which I sit at a desk with only 2 other co-workers present. I went home, fed the baby dinner, and put her to sleep in her crib. I then began dinner for my husband and I. We ate, watched Netflix, then decided to head to bed at approximately 11 p.m. I began my nightly routine of undressing and getting ready for bed. So sorry to make you imagine this, but I'm taking a pee on the toilet when I decide to feel behind my knees, like on the back of your leg pit, and I feel something smooth there. I peel it off, and much to my shock, it's a clear band-aid. The kind that almost looks like a hospital brand, clear with a small little pad. I figured, oh, it must have stuck to me from somewhere else, except when I look under where the band-aid was, I find a red spot, like as if I had been given a shot with a lifted bump and red skin, etc. It's exactly like an injection site. It's sore to the touch and clearly somewhat fresh. So the band-aid was clearly covering an injured area. But I didn't put the band-aid there, and I have no recollection of getting a prick, a bump, or injury there ever. Here are the things I know make this all the more puzzling. The pants I had been wearing all day were a fresh pair from the dryer. If a band-aid had been in them, it would have certainly melted in the dryer. I sleep naked, so it couldn't have been on my PJs. My bed was stripped on Sunday and cleaned, so it's not something that had been caught up in our sheets. The band-aids I have at home are the skin-colored fabric kind. I prefer these to any others. I also rarely even use band-aids. I checked our stash, and this is the only kind on hand and in our bathroom and first aid kits. It's not for my daughter, as she got shots 2 weeks ago, but got small, circular Snoopy band-aids. I have them in her memory book, so I know this for sure. It's not a band-aid for my work because I work for a restaurant chain. which requires we distribute blue-colored cloth band-aids so they don't get mixed up in the food and go unnoticed. My husband has not left the house in 2 days because he's on spring break from school, so he's home with the baby. So he couldn't have brought it in from anywhere. I showered the day before this at night time, so it had to have gotten affixed to me between midnight 3:10:19 and 11 p.m. 3:11:19. My husband was just as baffled and confused by it, and I 100% trust he had nothing to do with it, as he encouraged I get it looked at to be sure. You're thinking I have carbon monoxide in my house, but I don't. We have fire and carbon detectors hardwired, and they are functioning. Batteries were swapped earlier this month. It's been 15 hours since I discovered this injury in Band-Aid, and it's gotten redder, more swollen and sore since. It's noticeably painful. I'm thoroughly freaked out and have no idea what the hell happened and how. 4. I am an 18-year-old male. This happened to me about 4 years ago. I lived in a small town at the time and had a group of 4 or 5 friends in said town. We had just been walking around one summer's night, ding-dong ditching, exploring private property, etc. Shit young teens do. Anyway, I get home a little earlier than usual because I have family from out of state that I want to say hi to, because it's been a while since I've seen them. My aunt, uncle, and cousin are the out-of-state family members. It's probably around 9 at night and they, including my mom, are upstairs talking and catching up. When I get home, I head up the stairs to where my room is also located. Immediately at the top of the stairs, to my left, is my mom's room. And to the right, the hallway splits into a Y shape where my room is at the right, and the guest room is on the left. However, all of my family is gathered in my mom's room just chatting. Anyway, for some reason I didn't even take the time to turn to my left and greet my family. This is unusual of me. I wasn't mad or anything, just didn't say hi, I guess. So I'm sitting in my room changing into some sleeping clothes, and I overhear my uncle asking my mom if she knows about the book of Numbers in the Bible. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but I heard him tell her that it's a book in the Bible that not too many people pay attention to or are aware of. He specifically said that the book entails that everything you ever need to know in life has to deal with numbers. So I heard all this and kinda just tuned out after a bit. About 10 minutes have passed since I got home, and I still haven't gone down the hallway to talk to my family. But then my mom calls me over and says to come say hi. So I get to the room and hug and greet everyone. We start talking about deep shit, aliens, life, death, etc. Because we usually just have those kind of conversations. Some time passes and my uncle asks me the exact same question he asked my mom, about if I knew what the Book of Numbers was. I try to play it off and not smile and pretend like I didn't just hear him say it 10 minutes ago. I then repeat word for word what he just told my mom. I felt that he thought my laughter was in an effort to make fun of him or play some prank, so I decided to just come clean and admit that I only knew of it because he had just stated it 10 minutes ago. However, when I said this, I could feel everyone's stomachs in the room drop. They all looked at me with an almost fearful gaze. My uncle instantly replied, "How did you know that?" So I repeated myself and said how I had just heard him explain what it was to my mother not 10 minutes ago. He then replied, "We did talk about that, yes, but that was hours before you even came home. We haven't talked about it since then." So at this point I'm smiling and thinking, haha guys, very funny. I just heard you talking about it. My family usually pulls shit like this, so I figured that it was just another one of their pranks. After about 15 solid minutes of them not breaking, I was like, shit, did I just cross over into some alternate dimension or get a glimpse into the past? To this day, that night still creeps the hell out of my family, and they still haven't admitted to it being a prank, so I must believe them. 5. I grew up with a strange story. An incident that happened to my mum that defied explanation and bordered on the supernatural. As a kid, I regaled this story to my classmates at break time. It was the centerpiece, the principal attraction in my collection of ghost stories, and true accounts of weird shit that happened in our house. It had wonderful currency because it was true, and in kids' story terms, it was an exotic one. As it's not my story, I hope to do it justice here. I've stuck to facts and not embroidered anything. and recently asked my mum to go through it again to refresh me on the details. My pet name for my mum is Muth, short for mother, so I'll refer to her this way throughout this account. In the late 60s, Muth, around 19 years old, was at art school studying fine art. She shared part of a house with two other girls, Jenny and Claire, who were at the same college. The landlady, who lived in a separate part of the house, was a bitch from hell. They all hated her. She had two sons, aged about 8 and 10, and she was horrible to them. Luckily, the landlady kept interaction with her tenants to a minimum. Back then, in England, college students received grants from their education authorities to cover living costs. Very nice. And there was no such thing as tuition fees. That said, grant payments varied according to what county you lived in, and Muth was unlucky enough to come under the most miserly area in the country. This meant that even though she had a weekend job, she was always short of money and couldn't go out much. This didn't help her straight-laced reputation. She was known as the Sunday school teacher in college, and despite being an art student around the time of the Summer of Love, she never took recreational drugs. Claire wasn't around a great deal because she stayed at her boyfriend's house, but Muth became quite close with her other housemate Jenny. Sometimes on Friday nights there would be a disco at the student union. On this occasion Jenny was thrilled because she had a new boyfriend, Steve. She had been meeting him for drinks and snacks, and the excitement was building up for her in the week running up to the disco. Muth had even been roped into going shopping with Jenny for a new outfit. She bought a dress but couldn't afford to go out, so it was put away in the wardrobe. The night of the disco arrived. Jenny left at about 8 p.m, and Muth settled down to hand-sew a garment in the little sitting room at the front of the house. Although they were in Manchester, the house was on a small housing estate just outside the city centre, so it was pleasantly quiet. They couldn't even hear the landlady and her family who resided at the back of the house, the front part being allocated to the students. Muth quietly listened to the programs on Radio 4 as she sewed. About an hour after Jenny left, Muth heard the bitchwoman landlady putting out the empty milk bottles for collection the next morning. This would have been around 9:15 p.m. All was peaceful until 10:30 when she suddenly heard Jenny inserting her keys into the front door. Jenny's keys jangled in a distinctive way, and Muth knew it couldn't have been Claire because she was away for the weekend. The landlady, too, didn't surface until after she put the milk bottles out. That's odd for Jenny to come back so early, Muth thought. She heard the front door close and Jenny running upstairs. Jenny's room was situated halfway up the staircase, just above the hall and the sitting room. Muth heard Jenny's bedroom door open and close, and once inside, Jenny started crying. Oh no, she thought. Sounds like something's happened with Steve. Muth waited for a while. That awkward teetering of should I, shouldn't I intervene? But the sobbing continued, so she decided to go up. She paused for some time outside Jenny's door, still wondering whether or not to go in. Jenny was still crying and unresponsive, so she knocked and let herself into the room. As soon as she opened the door, the crying stopped. Why? Because there was no one there. The room was completely empty. What's always fascinated me is that Muth wasn't frightened, but it did leave her extremely perplexed. Perhaps due to the general headfuckery of the night, she closed Jenny's door and decided to go to bed. She'd been in bed for about half an hour when Jenny, in actuality, came running up the stairs, burst into Muth's room and threw herself onto her bed. She was sobbing her eyes out, so much so that it was a while before Jenny could actually speak. "We had an argument and he's dumped me." Muth tried to comfort her, but Jenny wasn't getting very far, so she decided to tell Jenny what happened. Naturally, Jenny was amazed. It shocked her out of crying, and she was able to go to bed, although no such further incidents occurred in the house. It wasn't the last time Muth experienced this phenomena. Many years later, on 2 occasions in our family home, my parents heard heavy adult footsteps walking across the bedroom above the living room. Both times the source of the footsteps was investigated, but nobody was there. A double-glazing salesman overheard a second occurrence, and when my parents asked him what he thought the noise was, he said, "There's definitely someone upstairs." Muth always used the term ESP to describe her own experience. This stands for extrasensory perception, which was a popular phrase at the time to denote precognition. This does indicate that everything Muth experienced was in her mind. I would argue that this was something external to her. So many online glitch stories have an eerie similarity to Muth's experience. I find this reassuring as it validates her account and, I believe, gives some kind of credence to the theory that there might be multiple universes out there that occasionally and briefly interact. My thoughts are that in a parallel universe, Jenny came home a little earlier. Maybe in another one, Muth actually got to go to the disco. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Glitch in the Matrix Stories, episode 100, apparently. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before we go any further, I'd like to give a shout out to Reddit user... Bleep Blop Bloop. Okay, fair enough. They were the author of story number 1. That was the one with the car that hydroplaned. So thank you kindly for the use of your story. And of course, if I am using somebody's story, if you want to shout out in the outro, that's fine. If you want me to give a little plug to an Instagram or something, totally fine. You guys just have to ask. I really didn't realize I was recording episode 100 there till I went to do the outro. Completely slipped my mind. Now, as I said, I'm not planning anything special for this one. As you can see, just a regular video. Given that it can be quite hard to put together sometimes, I think that I put one out is special enough on this particular occasion. Also, I'd like to apologise for any kind of windy sounds in the background. I can't fight the wind. I've tried. I always lose. But we have it's a bit stormy here in Scotland right now. So it's a bit blowy outside. And I needed to record. I'm kind of back to recording at night again right now because I seem to get less disruption from the neighbours if I'm recording. Recording at night. It was either the neighbours or the water people. I suspect probably both. But, yeah. So, with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.